Welcome back, Team Glop. Happy Easter to all of those who celebrate. Today is a little bit of a special video. I'm going to be doing some coverage on the Random Battle Team Tour. As I mentioned in an earlier video, this is something that I wanted to touch on, and it was something that I took part in over the past couple months. So this is my first time actually competing in a Smogon tour. And what this was a tournament involving 8 teams that were battling it out to become the best at randomized formats. So there were a couple different starting slots and 3 substitute slots. And basically, players were picked in a snake format. So it's a draft. And these were the formats that were played. So you had Gen 8, 2 Gen 7s, and a couple past generations, as well as some side things like Battle Factory and Hackmons. So this was actually the first Smogon tour that I took part in. I've been playing Mons for like 9 or 10 years, but I never really got involved in Smogon stuff until very recently. And I'm glad I did, because this was a blast, and I had a lot of fun. So I learned that this only takes place once a year, so for those of you who are interested, I'm sorry, you missed your chance. But next year it'll be coming back around, and this is basically how you would sign up for it. So you have your Smogon username, your Showdown username, the formats that you feel that you are skilled in, and then your time zone and your foreseeable inactivity. So there were managers, of course, for each team. I was part of Team Victini, managed by the very talented Random Duck and Sharpclaw. And also a big thank you to Sharpclaw. They're actually the person who designed the avatar that I showed off in my last video. So shout out to them. They did a really nice job in that. So here's just an example of, what your post would look like. So that's about it covering this, but what I also wanted to show off was the very first set. So week 1, everybody was kind of posting like their replays for their matches. And week 1, I was actually scheduled for Gen 8 Monotype. So starting off here, I'm fighting against Mitsuki, who I learned is actually a pretty good opponent. And just to give the viewers some point of reference, as I mentioned earlier, in a random format, you try not to reveal too much of your team early. So I actually have a mono bug team, and my team was Centiscorch, SHEDINJA, Golisopod, Orbital, Butterfree, and Crustle. The reason I list those off is because, again, you can't see them over here, but it'll be important information to keep in mind as the battle progresses. So, turn 1, it's Centiscorch versus the Togedemaru, and I'll probably be pausing at a couple points here, so sorry if that's a little annoying. Right off the bat here, I feel pretty free to just fire off an attack, as they're going to pull a switch into Lantern. But I actually make a switch to SHEDINJA, which makes sense, actually, because Togedemaru can't touch SHEDINJA at all. And this SHEDINJA proves to be so clutch. Like, this SHEDINJA pretty much single-handedly wins me this game. Spoiler. So I know that Lanterns are always choiced in this format, so I feel really safe just staying in and throwing off a Will-O-Wisp. Just to get an idea of what his team has, and just getting some nice residual damage. So I don't want to stay in and take an Aura Wheel here. I'm going to go out into my Golisopod as they make a nice play and go for Parting Shot. That's going to allow them to get back into Togedemaru. But as I've shown, I'm very comfortable switching into SHEDINJA. And I'm going to once again throw off a Will-O-Wisp, just in case they make a switch into something that isn't with the more Pico. So nothing too crazy to predict here. I'm just going to go right back into my Golisopod, as they actually click Aura Wheel, and this allows me to get a big hit off. So I can just throw off a first impression, and I believe I crit the Togedemaru upon switching. Yeah. So that's pretty nice, because I can, again, just go right out into my SHEDINJA, but I actually go Orbital, which makes sense. It's been a while since I did this replay. I go for Sticky Web there, just trying to get some speed control in the team. I do remember here, though, that he starts going brazy with these Zing Zaps, and he just starts going for it. I believe he gets 2 flinches. No, I recover, then he gets 2 flinches here. That's right. So he's just trying to flinch me now, which makes sense. I probably shouldn't have even stayed in with Orbital, but I think I had Body Press in this set, which I wanted to just get some damage off. But here, I decided it's not worth to risk it, so I'm just going to go back into SHEDINJA, and as you can see, everybody in the chat thinks that I'm terrible. You can see that these guys speaking another language are saying, wow, Glop's such a shitter battler, which, I mean, I understand, I'm pretty bad. So I think here I still just keep clicking Will-O-Wisp, but yeah. And at some point, I think I realized that I should just start going for Shadow Claw, because it looks like nothing wants to take a Will-O-Wisp. He goes for Rapid Spin, gets rid of the hazards, which is a smart play. And And I believe I just throw off another first impression. Yeah. And then here I pull a switch back into SHEDINJA. And I throw off yet another Will-O-Wisp, I believe. Or no, I pull double into Orbital. That's right. And here I know I ran a calc to see if Shadow Ball would KO, because I'm pretty sure these are Life Orb. So I made a calc just to make sure I would live that, and it turns out I did. So I wanted to start getting some damage on this thing that way. So I decided to go for Recover. He yawns here. Yeah, that's right. Which is kind of annoying, but it allows me to just get at my web once again. As I'm actually going to let this thing just fall asleep, because I figure somebody's got to take the sleep, so it's going to have to be Orbital. So SHEDINJA coming back out here, and I think this is the turn I actually man up in Shadow Claw. No, I'm just kidding. I only click Will-O-Wisp because I'm bad. So here I pull a switch into Centiskorch. I believe this thing was AV, because it takes his hit very nicely. And I know I attack here, and I actually make a really nice play in this next turn. So every single time this Lantern's come out, I've always gone SHEDINJA since it can't even touch it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's turn 27. My opponent's down. They have to start making some kind of play to, like, get back into the game. So I figure, okay, he's not staying in with Lantern. I've never let him get an attack off with Lantern. So I actually decide to stay in here and kind of risk my Centiskorch and actually go for another knockoff. In hindsight, I probably should have just clicked Leech Life, but I figured I just want to get rid of something's item to keep on the pressure. So then here, I believe I go back into my Goliath. Oh no, I should kill it off, yeah. Because I'm faster than it thanks to the web being up, which is really nice. They're going to go back into Lantern, and this is kind of like something that's kind of a hard concept to explain in a battle. I mean, okay, so to be fair, like, I have an advantage since I have the SHEDINJA. I can really control what plays I make. But, like, on turn 27 there was just a showcase of, like, I know that my opponent knows I have SHEDINJA. And so I had a lot more flexibility in terms of mixing up my playstyle. So, like, comparing being safe to making some risky plays like that knockoff. But here I realize I'm ahead. I don't need to make any kind of crazy plays. So I'm just going to pull a switch back into SHEDINJA as he goes for Hydro Pump. And I believe here I just throw off a Shadow Claw. Yeah. And then here, I'm really proud of this play here. So I know that Togedemaru gets Spiky Shield. And I know he can go for it here if I have Shadow Sneak. And that's kind of like a desperation play he would have to make in order to get rid of the SHEDINJA. So I just go ahead and throw off a Will-O-Wisp here. And then in the following turn, I make an even better play by going for Wisp again. I just love clicking that button. And what that covers is he went for Wish there. But it would cover if he tried to go for a double Spiky Shield, right? Because some players would be like, all right, well, you've gotten your Protect off. Now I can Shadow Sneak with impunity. But you necessarily can't, right? He could always Protect again. So I just wanted to make sure that confirm I would get rid of this Togedemaru or get some residuals on one of his other Pokemon. So that's why I went for Will-O-Wisp. So Togedemaru is going to go down. And Jolteon's coming back out. And here my opponent makes a really nice play. They get the Spadef drop, I think. No. Damn, it's later in the battle. They make a sick play. Trust me. I go for Leech Life here because I'm like, okay, well, I take any hit. And then I go back to SHEDINJA. I think this is where they make a good play. So I believe I Shadow Claw. Right. And then here they actually predict my switch into Centiskorch, and they go for Thunderbolt, and they get the full para. Which kind of sucked, but then as it turns out here, it didn't even matter since they got like a crazy roll. So they actually get rid of my Centiskorch, which is kind of bad, but it's not too detrimental. Here I figure, okay, well, I see no first impression switch-ins. Let's get another big hit off. As Glycopod claims yet another kill. And then they reveal the god. Pikachu. Now this thing was actually pretty scary, because knockoff KO SHEDINJA, Orbital, and it takes out Glycopod and Butterfree with the electric move. And I have Crust on the back, but I really don't want that thing taking a hit. So what I'm going to opt to do here is just sack off my Butterfree, because I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to get a chance to set up. And I just don't want this Pikachu getting out of hand. So I let Butterfree go down, but what that allows me to do is now go back into my Glycopod and get yet another KO with first impression. So they're going to give Pikachu to me. Thank goodness. Biggest threat out of the way. And now Dracozolt comes out. So on this turn, I'm like, okay, Orbital has done its job. I'm okay letting this thing go down because I don't want to risk my other Pokemon. So they just go for Bolt Beak and knock me out. And then I go into SHEDINJA, and this is where I'm a noob because I should have just clicked Shadow Claw, but I'm like, hey, yo, let me Wisp. And of course I miss. So this is kind of annoying. I actually had to make like a really kind of a tense play here where, you know, if he called my switch into Glycopod, I probably might have lost this battle. But luckily they go for Shadow Ball, and this is going to allow me to click First Impression again, and I get rid of this Jolteon. So now it's Dracozolt versus the world, and this next turn, I think a lot of people think that I misclicked, but I actually made the biggest brain play of all time, and I kind of want to talk about this. So turn 46, I've already gone for First Impression, and I decide, you know what, let me click First Impression again. And here was my thought process. So Mitsuki here is down, they're on their last Pokemon, and I know that it's Choice Scarfed, thanks to Orbeetl's Frisk. So I figured, okay, if my opponent Dynamaxes here, then I'm okay sacking Glycopod because that's turn 1 of their Dynamax. I then could go into my Crustle, click Shell Smash on turn 2, live any hit thanks to Sturdy. I could then Dynamax myself on their 3rd turn of Dynamax, click Max Guard, and then from there they would run out of Dynamax, and I'd be a Dynamax plus 2 speed, plus 2 attack Crustle, and then I could then one-shot them with Max Quake. So my thought process was, hey, let me just sack off Glycopod here. And it also covered this, right? If they go for Aerial Ace on my Choke, switching to SHEDINJA, then First Impression will allow me to emergency exit out, and I get the positioning that I want. So I'm going to pull switch into Crustle thanks to the emergency exit, and I believe they Dynamax here, yep. As I'm just going to Shell Smash up, get my boosted attack stat. And then I believe turn 2 here, I Dynamax Max Guard. Right. And then this is both of our last turn of Dynamax. Actually, it's his last turn of Dynamax. I go for Max Quake, and it does a great amount. As you can see, if he was not Dynamaxed, like I was talking about earlier, Max Quake would just one-shot this thing, and that would have been the game. So I get off a really nice amount of damage with Max Quake. And that's going to seal the game because I still have my Glycopod. I can come in the next turn and just click First Impression. So that was the first game in our series. We play it in a best-of-3 style of format. So I'm really glad that I played SHEDINJA how I did. And I'm also really happy that there was no, like, crazy matchup in terms of typing. Like, for example, you know, ground versus electric. I felt like it was a pretty fair match, although my opponent didn't have any hazards. So dealing with SHEDINJA was very difficult for them. So kind of a narrow 2-0 victory in my favor. But as we go into game 2, it's actually really hilarious. I thought this was so funny. So it's Mono Grass versus Mono Grass. And my team was Ferrothorn, Abomasnow, Vileplume, Venusaur, Virizion, and Rillaboom. So turn 1 and turn 2 are hilarious because I lead off with Ferrothorn, they lead off with Abomasnow. And we both have the same idea of, let's reposition. I say, I want to save my Ferrothorn's health. This thing could be valuable, especially if he is Monograss. So I'm like, let me switch out into my own Abomasnow. And they say, let me switch out into my own Ferrothorn. And everybody in the chat thought this was pretty funny. I mean, it was like, wow, we didn't expect this. But here we are, turn 2, and we have 2 of the same Pokemon. So what this tells me is that, okay, I know he's Monograss. I know that this game is going to be kind of determined based on who plays their Abomasnow better. And you're going to see that come into effect later in the battle. So I know that if I make some like aggressive switches with Abomasnow, I can pick up some KOs or at least get rid of Ferrothorn, which would allow my other grass types a better chance at winning the game. But right here, we both have the same idea. We're like, all right, we need to get some hazards up. Unfortunately, I think my Ferrothorn did not have Stealth Rock. So I just go for a Spike here as they reveal Delmise. And Delmise was a whole threat to my team. Like, I did not have a lot of good ways of getting rid of this thing. So I go for a Spike, and I'm going to pull a switch into my Vileplume, since it's basically my best check to this thing. As they make a very nice play and they go for Sword Stance, they're putting on some immediate pressure after getting up some hazards. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got to weaken this thing. So I go for Strength Sap. That's going to allow me to get up to full and also weaken their attack stat. And they go for Anchor Shot. And I kind of make a noob play in this next turn. I think this was me getting a little bit panicked, thinking like, okay, well, I've got to make something happen. I've got to get damage on this Dhelmise or I'm going to lose. Whereas my opponent is calm, cool, collected. They realize, okay, hidden power doesn't exist anymore. That's going to give them a free switch into their Ferrothorn, and they're going to be able to get up some more hazards. So I go for Sludge Bomb like an idiot, which puts me in the back foot, because right here, I realize, okay, if I go into Ferrothorn, then we're going to be back to the same scenario where they can switch into Dhelmise and they can pick up a KO. So I'm like, I have to do something about this. So I'm going to go ahead and go for Strength Sap. And they're going to get up a Spike, which is terrible. So I'm one turn behind them, basically. I go into my Ferrothorn with the same idea of I got to get up some hazards. So I'm going to go for a Spike here as they pull a switch into Dhelmise. And I believe that I go for a switch into my Vileplume as a response. Kind of weird that Spikes are like invisible right now, but I don't know. They go for SD, as I believe I just go for Strength Sap. No, I get off damage with Sludge Bomb because I realize, oh, you know what? I'm in a bad position. I'm behind, so I've got to put on some offensive pressure. So I get some damage with Sludge Bomb. And what that's going to allow me to do now is go into my Abomasnow and get off a huge hit. So I make said play, and I just click Blizzard. No reason not to, as they're going to give me some nice damage on Ferrothorn. And I believe after this, I pull a switch back into my Ferrothorn, acknowledging that, yep, max layers are going up. This is going to be a very volatile game. So I think that's their last Spike. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and get up my last Spike as they pull a switch into Dhelmise. And at this point of the game, I have to make a really tough decision because I'm like, okay, well, switching is very pressured at this point. And although I value my Ferrothorn's health, with max layers up and Hail, it's just not going to be very easy for it to get a lot of like mileage. So I decide, okay, I think my best bet here is to just get rid of this Dhelmise, and hopefully that opens up a door for my other teammates. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this thing out with 2 Gyro Balls, as they're going to go for Earthquake and whittle down my Ferrothorn, which sucks, but like I said, I really have no other choice in this matter. So they get some nice damage off with 2 EQs. I take them out with the second Gyro Ball. Thankfully, there was no roll shenanigans, as they're going to go into Virizion, and I have pretty much no switch into this thing. I don't want Venusaur coming in, taking a big hit. And my Vileplume, of course, is gone, so I'm going to have to sack Ferrothorn here to the close combat. I'll get off some Iron Barb damage, which is nice. And from here, I make a really swanky play. I'm really proud of this. As I mentioned earlier, whoever plays their Abomasnow better is going to win this game. So I'm like, okay, Virizion has no business staying in here. They're probably just going to go to Ferrothorn since they really don't need it anymore. And also, they pretty much wall my Venusaur because I have no HP Fire. So I make a little bit of a risky switch here. I pull a double into my Abomasnow on the Ferrothorn, which is great because now I pick up a KO with Blizzard. So Hail goes up. I take them out with Blizzard in the following turn. And they are now forced to go into their own Abomasnow. And luckily I win a speed tie here. And I get some nice damage off with Ice Shard. So from this position, I have to go into Virizion because it's the only thing that takes a hit and can knock out the Abomasnow. I really didn't want Venusaur getting chipped because I think that after hazards, I'm pretty sure Venusaur would actually go down to Ice Shard. So the hazard damage is important on Virizion, and I'll show why in a little bit here. They're going to go to Shiinotic, and like right here, so I'm down, right? And usually in these positions, that's when you have to boss up and make a play. I did not boss up. I made a very pansy play. I just clicked close combat. I really wanted to SD here because I figured if I SD'd here and then Dynamaxed, maybe I had a shot at like, you know, ripping through the rest of his team. But unfortunately, I just clicked close combat. Thankfully, there's no effect Spore shenanigans, which is good. And here, I'm forced into my Venusaur, but luckily it takes the Moonblast, which is all I needed it to do. And this is actually a pretty huge turn, because getting rid of Shiinotic here opened up a door for my teammate in the back, Rillaboom. As you're about to see, Rillaboom is going to give this man the business. So they opt to go into Virizion, which I kind of think is a misplay. Yes, it punishes my Venusaur, but you don't know what the last is. and you're going to see why that's important. So they KO me with Stone Edge, and at this point, I realize, okay, I just have to go for it. I've just got to go for it with Rillaboom. Now, my set was pretty crappy. It was like high horsepower, drum beating, bulk up, and some other move I don't remember, but I can tell you confidently it was not superpower. Because that does come into play later. So right here, I'm going to go for the bulk up. I kind of was like banking off a choke. I feel like they should have SD'd in that position, but, you know, alas, they made the play they made, which makes sense. I understand why they went to Venusaur, but I had no way of knowing if they had it, right? So here I say, all right, time to press the big button. I have Max Quake. I can boost my Spadef, and maybe, just maybe, that'll be enough for me to power through this Venusaur. So I'm going to fire off a Max Quake, and I'm going to get a Spadef boost, and you're going to see that that's really nice for me, because this boost allows me to snack the Sludge Bomb. It does no damage. And that's pretty huge, because they don't Dynamax in response. Like, I feel like in turn 26, they should have known that my hand was forced, and that they could have just Dynamaxed to counter my Dynamax, and then I would have had no shot. But they kind of just throw away Venusaur, which I really don't agree with. So I get another boost here with Max Quake, as they're going to go into their Virizion, and they're going to go for the Max Guard to stall out my last turn of Dynamax. Makes perfect sense. But at this point, I feel like they're too late, because I've already got a ton of boost on my Rillaboom, and as you're about to see, Drum Beating is about to come in clutch here, because I can lower their speed as this Max Knuckle bounces off. And this is going to allow me to outspeed the Virizion in the following turn. So from this position, I should have just like straight up won the game. But again, I did not have superpower. And this is important because Abomasnow comes in, and I can't kill it with anything. So I have to go for Drum Beating. Unfortunately, the grassy terrain wore off, so if it was still there, I just immediately won. But I don't get the kill, and they end up freezing me with Blizzard, which blew. I was like, oh my god, I just lost this game. I'm like, I literally outplayed them every step of the way, but I lose, right? I'm like, great. So I'm frozen. I can't do anything about that. They KO me with the next Blizzard, but you're about to see that Virizion is a monster. Everybody who talks crap about this Pokemon, I believe in this Pokemon. Here's the damage calc, and I hope this is coming through well in OBS. It's coming through good enough. Basically, Ice Shard does 33.2 to 39.7, meaning that at my health, which I put in the calc in here at 39%, they had an 18% chance to knock me out. So luckily, Virizion comes through with the tank, with the 0.04% clutch. I'm pretty sure I lived in like 1 or 2 HP. And I'm able to knock out the Abomasnow with close combat, and that's going to be the game. So it was incredibly down to the wire. A really, really narrow 2-0 in my favor. And it was a great first showing for me, honestly. I was really, really proud that I came through for my team. You know, like I said, this is my first ever like tour set. So for me, this is a huge deal, showing that I'm a good battler, and I was able to prove it to everybody. Now, obviously, it's a random format, so there's some variance. You know, teams can influence things and yada, yada, yada. But, like, you can see along the way, like, I made the necessary plays that I had to. And, again, I really feel like my opponent not Dynamaxing with their Venusaur really cost them. Because it's mono poison, or it's mono grass versus mono grass, right? So they have a poison mon. Like, Ferrothorn, I'm pretty sure, is the only grass poison type, or grass steel type, that you can get. So I don't understand why they didn't just Dynamax with the Venusaur. But who knows? You know, obviously they thought maybe Virizion was going to be enough to bring it back. But Rillaboom's clutch, and I'm really proud of this. So thanks for tuning in, guys. That's going to be it for this video. Tomorrow I think I'm going to do coverage of Week 2, where I'm going to get humbled. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.